Hello again. So there's been a lot of reporting on the comments that President Trump made yesterday evening at his Mar-a-Lago resort. And much of it is being made in the media this morning. There's a lot of talk of Trump doesn't know what he's doing, or he's trying to rewrite history, or he doesn't care about people, or whatever those comments are in the media. And as ever, Trump is at the centre of all controversy, and everything he says is poured over by millions and millions of people, it seems. Now, for my mind, I'm just pause for a second and just have a look at the Trump psychology itself. Now, I don't know if you've read his book, Art of the Deal. I read his book some time ago. It's a business manual, but also it's an insight into the man himself, how he approaches negotiation. And in the book, he details quite strongly, when you go into a negotiation, you come at it from a position of strength. You never enter a negotiation when you're in a position of weakness. You shake things up. You talk to people on the sidelines. You get people's feelings for what they're going to do. And then you bring everyone round the table at the end, offer sweeteners, and let's get this deal done and let's get on. And this is what he's attempting to do here, I believe. Now, I have been to America, and I don't know whether you've ever been to America, but it's a fascinating place. And when I went there, and I went to New York, I went to Trump Towers, and it gives you an insight into the man and what he's actually built. And when you go to Trump Towers, it's very golden there, and you walk inside, and there's a lot of gold everywhere. But there's a massive sign on the wall. And I took a picture of that sign that said, "There is no finish line." And that's Trump's psychology. He gets things done. He's very expedient. And in his book, Art of the Deal, he talks very much on the art of brevity, meaning there isn't time to be faffing about. What we need to do, we need to get this deal done and move on. And again, I think that's what he's doing here. Another point to note is a point that Elon Musk did make on X, which ties into how Trump treats the press. Now, Mr. Musk said on X, that he believes that world leaders should spend more time being open and honest with the press, i.e. on X, and just saying things. And when the charge was put to him, well, what if I make a mistake? What if they make a mistake? He said, well, human beings do make mistakes, and that's okay. So his whole philosophy on that is, yes, leaders do make mistakes, but they are human. And you do get that feeling when you listen to UK politicians, that essentially what they're attempting to do is that they're attempting to step in between landmines. They're very, very cautious, very circumspect in how they go about things, and they'll say, oh, well, it's not really my place to comment, I'll just give you the party line. Very, very, very rarely do politicians, particularly in our country and in the European Union, step outside the boundaries of the Overton window, what's considered acceptable, what isn't. So when other politicians from elsewhere in the world do that, we're kind of given a shock, and our media in the UK kind of doesn't really know how to cope with that. So when Trump is walking around, it needs to be borne in mind that he has a pack of press people virtually there 24/7 following his every move, and he's quite happy with that, as it says in his book. Any publicity is good publicity, and that's his mantra. And so what you've got is a situation where, unlike previous presidents who have these curated press conferences, and they'll come out in front of people and they'll say, oh, this is the party line, here we go, and then they'll walk off after 5 minutes. Trump spends a fair amount of time in front of the press just ad-libbing, just talking and giving his thoughts, feelings, and how he sees the situation. And so, again, when our media interprets that and Trump makes a misstep, as I believe he did last night, then everything's blown out of all proportion. So let's take a look at the actual words that were spoken during this press conference.
And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic. It's so sad.
So there you have it. Now, the press is focusing on you should never have started it, and there's been many people in the media today commenting on that and saying, well, Trump's trying to rewrite history, he's a demagogue, he's a dictator, he's now in league with Putin and they're going to take over the world and everyone's going to be at war, blah, blah, blah. This is all nonsense. Do I believe that Trump thinks that Ukraine started the war? No. I believe that Trump believes that this war mainly could have been avoided near the beginning. And of course, what's forgotten in all of this debate, with everyone screaming for America to invite everyone into the process and continue this forever war, is that although numbers are hard to come by with any accuracy, it looks like there's been over 1 million people killed in this particular conflict, on both sides. On the Ukrainian side and the Russian side, many, many bodies, and the bodies are piled high in the sky. Yet, when people seem to debate this stuff, they seem to forget that 1 million people have been killed, and that needs to be thought about when we're considering this as well. Now, on those comments, what I believe was happening, Trump was just ad-libbing about what he thought was going on, and I think he was trying to shake up negotiations. Now, when you look at these negotiations and what they're attempting to do, there were some interesting comments by a man called Colonel Jack Keane. His name is John M. Jack Keane. Now, he is an American colonel, and he now serves as the chairman for something called the Institute for the Study of War. And mainly what they do is they draw these kind of battle maps of what's happening in Ukraine. And this man has a fair idea about what's going on, and he's been in the military a long time. And he said, I've had a couple of conversations directly with Mr. Trump, the president, and I know specifically what he's attempting to do. And in Colonel Keene's opinion, and obviously this has to be taken with a pinch of salt because he's going to protect the American president. He is an American after all, this Colonel Keene. He said that what Trump was attempting to do in these negotiations and sending Mr. Rubio and their delegation across to Riyadh to speak to the Russians, he was attempting to ascertain whether Putin was serious. Is Vladimir Putin serious about wanting a deal that he's going to find acceptable? Or is it that Putin is playing games? Is he kind of half dangling this peace deal saying, oh, well, if the situation's right, if I can take 20% of Ukraine and if this happens and that happens and no peacekeeping force and no NATO membership for Ukraine and whatever else they're debating and negotiating, is it the case that Putin is dangling this peace carrot to everyone in the West when really he has no idea? And I think in Trump isolating these negotiations and America approaching Russia in this way, I think they're attempting to ascertain whether Putin wants peace or not. And if it is the case that Putin is just using this as a method to just prolong things in his games of 4D chess, then I believe that this would have a significant impact on the thoughts and feelings of everybody in the West, particularly myself, who to this moment I've believed that given the right circumstances, Putin would negotiate a peace deal. Yes, he shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. Yes, in the 21st century, it's not okay for European leaders to start marching into countries like happened in the 20th century. All of that is an obvious thing. Obviously, nobody believes that to be okay. But at the end of the day, when you've had 1 million people killed, at some point you've got to stop pushing young people into this meat grinder on this forever war. I mean, where does it actually end? Does it end with the European Union just piling bodies in there and more Russian people? I mean, this forever war has to come to a conclusion. But if Mr. Putin isn't serious about peace, then this war comes into question. Well, is this all he wants? Does Putin in fact want all of Ukraine? Does he want to go further? At that stage, this war is going to escalate, and it should escalate at that point. Because if Putin is not looking for peace and he just wants to continue taking over vast tracts of land, then he does need to be stopped, and at that point everyone will be on board with that. But right at this moment, the question of does Vladimir Putin actually want peace is well up in the air. So let's see what happens this week in Riyadh, and let's hope that Trump can get some type of peace deal on the table. And I think what will happen if he can do that, he's going to present that to the West, and then we'll see how our world leaders cope with this peace deal and how they go on about it. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.